Look, we need to talk about the new Bumblebee. Now, I know what you're going to think right off the bat. His comedy, right? The funny bits and everything. He's too humorous. That's one thing that I have a little bit of a gripe with, but that's not even the thing that is deterring me away from this new Bumblebee the most. Now, in terms of Transformers 1 itself as a movie, I think the movie was fantastic. I think the comedic scenes with Bumblebee in the movie, I think they work well. I think they actually hit and they are actually funny. However, that's the only thing they really use Bumblebee for. They don't give him any more serious moments. They don't give him any badass moments, badassatron, this and that.
Badassatron.
But that's all they really use him for. They don't give him any more serious moments. They don't give him any badass moments, even though he's Mr. Badassatron. But we don't really get to see any badassatron. It just kind of feels like, hey, Mr. Funny Guy, the whole movie. And I don't know how I feel about it. That combined with the fact that his design is just not my favorite. So in terms of these character breakdowns where I kind of analyze a single character from the series or more specifically that character from, a particular movie or a particular design language. So you got the G1 Bumblebee, then you have the 2007 Bayverse Bumblebee, then you have the Bumblebee movie Bumblebee. Then you have Transformers Prime Bumblebee. Now you have, Transformers Animated Bumblebee. And here we have Transformers One Bumblebee. And for the most part, his design has been pretty consistent. We either see him as more of like a sports muscle car kind of Camaro looking thing, or we're seeing him as more of like a Volkswagen Beetle type of vibe, more of a rounded, softer edges and stuff like that. So this is what we're used to seeing with Bumblebee, and they did stick to that in this movie. It's just that there's nothing special to it. There's no taste to it. It just doesn't scream Bumblebee to me. I don't know, maybe it's just missing like some black racing stripes or something, but it's just not Bumblebee for me. And that's really a shame because I'm so in love with all of the other character designs. I love Optimus. I love Megatron. I think Starscream looks fantastic. Thundercracker and all the Seekers look amazing. I think Alpha Trion looked really, really cool. I think Sentinel Prime looked at his best, basically. And I really wish Bumblebee was up there with those guys in that conversation. But for me, he's just not. Something is just lacking that gives it that flair, that gives it that sort of badass Bumblebee touch that we're used to. And, I'm a bigger fan of the animated designs for the most part when it comes to Transformers. I like G1 style Optimus. I think Transformers Prime Optimus is really sick. I also think War for Cybertron Optimus is really sick, both the video game version and the actual, War on Cybertron series with the whole Earthrise and everything and Siege. I think that Optimus looks really sick as well. And, Rise of the Beast, Bumblebee movie Optimus, when they typically go for a more boxy G1 inspired design, I really love those Optimus Primes. But for Bumblebee, on the other hand, I actually prefer his live action version. Now, my favorite looking Bumblebee is probably the first time we see him in 07 movie when he's the older, like 67 Camaro, whatever it is. I think it's a 67. Like, that's my favorite Bumblebee. I was just in love with that as a kid. I thought the old beat up Camaro is just so badass looking. I just think the grill is so cool looking in real life and on Bumblebee himself, on his chest and everything, in car form and robot form. I love that freaking design. And I think they did it even better in the Rise of the Beast movie. I think it just looks fantastic with the more rounded feet and stuff like that. All the figures and the toys that they made for that new Bumblebee just look fantastic with those, bigger feet, the more rounded feet. That's really the key characteristic that they changed. And they just sort of cleaned up the design a little bit, made it look less cluttered, less messy. And of course, they had the, kind of the off-road vibe to the vehicle form. But yeah, man, vintage Camaro Bumblebee is probably my favorite. And then I'm going to have to go ahead and say, actually, his Cybertron mode in the beginning of the Bumblebee movie, I thought looked really, really cool. I thought it was a dope way to portray him on Cybertron while, still feeling like the Bumblebee that I was used to. War for Cybertron, the video game, that's kind of the other instance where we see Bumblebee on Cybertron in recent memory. And it looked good. It was a little too bubbly looking for me, a little too rounded. I would have wished they maybe kind of squared him off a little more in some places. But this Bumblebee in the beginning of the Bumblebee movie on Cybertron, I thought that design was peak Bumblebee right there. And the figures they have look amazing for this design. Now, the new Transformers One Bumblebee, I feel like tried to capture a similar version of that, but they changed his head, obviously, and took away that live-action Bumblebee head and gave him, a more animated style face and stuff like that, which is fine, obviously. We've seen that before in G1 and everything. That's not the problem. It's just that the torso and kind of the limbs and everything, it's just lacking something that makes it Bumblebee for me. Maybe it's the feet, maybe it's the chest. I'm really not sure. But I just would have wished he had something more distinct going on and really kind of stood out amongst the other characters and had a more badass looking design. And he is kind of the comedic relief throughout the whole movie. I wish they didn't make such a joke of his character and they gave him some more serious moments because, oh yeah, he's been used for comedic bits and stuff before, and he has his comedic moments, especially without his voice box. When he's just kind of giving you those looks and kind of that R2-D2 type of comedy and stuff like that. It works very well. But in this case, I just think they were a little too strong with it. And like I said, the instances in the movie where they did use him for comedy, it did hit well. But it's just the fact that that's the only thing that they did with his character. Like, I wish they would have maybe dispersed the comedy more evenly amongst the cast. Like, even in the opening scene, in the opening couple scenes, we start to get the vibe that, Orion Pax is quite the comedian himself. You know what I'm saying? He kind of makes you laugh a little bit, and he's a little bit more goofy than maybe you'd be used to seeing Optimus Prime, act. But that can be explained, with two reasons, basically. Number one, it's an animated kids movie, not just a kids movie, but a movie that is trying to appeal to kids as well. So they have to sort of make it a little bit more friendly and goofy in that sense. And also just the sense that they're really trying to sort of hyperbolize the fact that this is younger Optimus Prime. He's not that strong leader yet, right? So we want to portray him as a little bit more of a adolescent. And they did that well. They pulled it off really well. Now, Bumblebee, I get it. It's sort of that same thing. But it just didn't quite do it for me for some reason. I think the Bumblebee in the Earthrise and Siege, War on Cybertron series, the animated series, I think that Bumblebee is a really good portrayal of what Bumblebee's sort of supposed to be like in a more G1 style. It's like you got all these badass robots and they all have their quirky personalities. And, you got Optimus, who's like the strong, fearless leader, the wise leader, never makes a wrong decision, never says anything really hysterically funny or anything like that. And in that series, they use Bumblebee more as like the sarcastic relief, right? He's not overly comedic or humorous, and he doesn't just kind of act like this bumbling idiot, but he's just used in more of like a sarcastic tone, and he's really kind of more like the regular guy of the crew, you know what I mean? He's the guy that you can relate to in that show, and you kind of like, all right, he's just sort of like grounded here. He doesn't really want to be a part of this, but he kind of got dragged into it. He's like, all right, whatever, you know what I mean? But he's kind of like a badass before we meet him, he does all these smuggling heists and stuff like that. He's involved with like these gangsters and shit. So it's kind of cool the way they portrayed him, and it makes sense how he evolves into, sort of the more badass fucking ninja scout that we're used to seeing in like the Bay movies and stuff like that. So I just wish they would have portrayed him in Transformers 1 a little bit more like they did in Earthrise. I think they did it really well there, and I think they should have just maybe built on what was already done very well in that series and not try to just make him, comedic relief for Keegan-Michael Key to just take away with. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on the new Bumblebee down in the comments below. I'm curious how many of you guys are a big fan of his new design. Maybe you really like it. Maybe you think it looks really sleek and really cool. And do you like his more comedic personality, or are you more of a fan of, when he doesn't talk in the Bayverse or in G1 or the Earthrise series, even like I was saying, where he's just a little bit more stoic, a little bit more calculated, still funny and still a little bit sarcastic, but just less of a bumbling idiot, you know what I mean? So let me know what you guys think down below, and let me know who you'd like me to break down from Transformers 1 next. We're going to stick with Transformers 1 for now while it's the hot topic, and then, we'll go back and analyze some stuff from the previous films and stuff. So anyway, it's been Prime's Theory, and thanks for watching. See you guys next time. Peace.